Bud Not Buddy by Christopher Paul Curtis. Chapter 12, Part 1. After breakfast, me and Mr. Lewis said goodbye to the Sleets and got back into the car. I leaned over the front seat to put my suitcase in the back. Mr. Lewis, someone stole all the blood last night, he said. I'll say one thing for you, Bud. When you go to sleep, you go way, way to sleep. You don't remember anything about last night after we got to Flint? I said, I don't think so, sir. After you so rudely fell asleep on me, we dropped the blood off at Hurley Hospital. Then I gassed up. Then I got in touch with your daddy to let him know you were all right. Uh-oh. What did he say, sir? I didn't call him. I sent a telegram to the log cabin. He still owns that club, doesn't he? Yes, sir. Good. Lefty Lewis leaned over and reached in the glove box of the car. He pulled out a flimsy piece of yellow paper and handed it to me. Across the top of the paper it said in big letters, Western Union. Underneath that it said, Heck stop. Bud OK. In Flint, stop at 4309 North Street. Stop return 8 p.m. Wed stop, Lefty stop. Man, I'll bet Herman E. Calloway was just as confused by this message as I was. I said, What does this mean, sir? Lefty Lewis said, When you send a telegram, the more letters you use, the more money you have to pay. So you try to keep your messages as short as you can. Here, let me see it. I handed him the paper. He said, Okay, heck, that stands for your dad, Herman E. Calloway. Bud OK in Flint. That lets him know how far you got and that you're safe. And you did get pretty far, Bud. Maybe he won't be too hard on you when he sees how resourceful you were at running away. I know I'd have been darn proud of one of my kids if they'd gotten that far, but I used to offer them money to run away and they'd never take it. At 4309 North Street, that's my daughter's address. And return 8 p.m. Wednesday lets him know I'm bringing you home by 8 tonight. I said, What are all of those stops, sir? He said, That's the telegram office's way of saying period. It just means that the sentence is over. Lefty Lewis spent most of the day doing errands all around Flint. He made me promise to wait in the car for him. I was good and happy when he said, That's it, Bud, time to head home. We drove past that sign that said Welcome to Flint on one side when he looked up and said, Uh-oh. Suddenly a siren went off sounding like it was in the back seat of the car. I raised my head up to look over the seat out the back window. Uh-oh was right. There was a Flint police car right behind us with the red light on top of his roof flashing on and off, and with the siren blasting. They'd found me. Shucks. This doggone FBI was just as good as the movie said it was. They were just like those Royal Canadian Mounted Police. They always got their man. I crouched down as low as I could. Lefty Lewis pulled the car over to the side of the road and said real calm and real slow, Bud, it's very important that you listen very carefully to what I'm going to tell you, and that you do exactly as I say. He kept his eyes stuck on the rearview mirror. By the way he was acting, I was starting to think that maybe Lefty Lewis was on the lam too. And wait a minute, how come this man didn't have a real name? Whoever heard of someone's mama naming him Lefty? That name had alias writ all over it. Lefty sounds like a real good name for a stick-up man. He seemed like it would be real easy for a machine gun Kelly to point at some poor slob and say, That's the guy what rotted me out. Lefty, finish him off. And what he just said about listening carefully and doing exactly what he said was number 8 of Bud Caldwell's Rules and Things to have a funner life and make a better liar out of yourself. Rules and Things number 8. Whenever an adult tells you to listen carefully and talks to you in a real calm voice, do not listen. Run as fast as you can because something real terrible is just around the corner, especially if the cops are chasing you. I stared at Lefty Lewis, keeping my fingers crossed that the next thing he said wouldn't be, You'll never take us alive, copper. Instead, he said, Bud, are you listening? Bud. I had to play along until I got a chance to make a break. I said, Yes, sir. Attaboy. First, close your mouth. Good. Now I want you to take the box that is next to me and quickly put it all the way beneath your seat. I picked up a box that was about the size of a big thick book and slid it under my seat. Lefty Lewis said, "Good boy. Now stay put and don't say anything." He winked at me and said, "Don't worry, it's all right." He opened his door and walked back to the police car. I tried to decide what to do. If I made a break for it, I was sure the coppers would plug me, but maybe Lefty Lewis would wrestle the gun away before they got a good shot off. Or maybe, just maybe, Lefty Lewis would take a bullet for me. Okay, I told myself, I'm going to count to 10. Then I'm going to reach into the back seat, snatch my suitcase, and book out for those buildings. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, I'm going to count to 10 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, this time I'm really going to grab that doggone. The cop and Lefty Lewis were standing at the door. The cop said, "I want to take a look in the trunk." Him and Mr. Lewis went around to the back, and the trunk opened, and I heard someone rambling around in it. I heard a loud bang and nearly jumped out of my seat. Whew! It was only Mr. Lewis closing the trunk. They walked back to the driver's door. The policeman looked in the back seat and said, "What's in the suitcase?" Mr. Lewis said, "Those are Bud's things. He was visiting here in Flint, and I'm taking him home to the Grand Rapids." The policeman looked at me and said, "Oh, your grandson, huh? You two look just alike." Lefty Lewis said, "Why, thank you, officer. I always thought the boy was unusually handsome." The cop didn't have a good sense of humor. He said, "All right, you're free to go. We can't be too careful. I don't know if you've heard, but we're having a lot of trouble in the factories here. We've been stopping all the cars we don't recognize. There have been reports that some more of those stinking labor organizers might be sneaking up here from Detroit." Mr. Lewis said, "You don't say." The cop said, "Drive carefully," and he touched the brim of his cop hat the way a cowboy in the movie pictures does. Lefty Lewis got in the car, started it, and we pulled back out on the highway. He made a scary face at me and said, "Bud, this has really been a couple of lucky days for you. First, I save you from being eaten by some vampires in Owasso. Then you seem to have survived my daughter's pancakes, and finally that police officer saves you from the feared and loathsome labor organizers of Detroit. You are truly blessed." Lefty Lewis was back to acting normal, but I kept wondering what was in the box he didn't want the cop to see. I said, "What's a labor organizer, sir?" Mr. Lewis said, "In Flint there are people who are trying to get unions in the automobile factories." Before I had a chance to get my next question in, Lefty Lewis said, "I'm going to save your breath for you, Bud. I'll bet the next thing out of your mouth is going to be, 'What's a union?' Right?" "Yes, sir." "A union is like a family. It's when a group of workers get together and try to make things better for themselves and their children." "That's all, sir?" "That's all." "Then why are the cops after them?" "That's a very good question. Look in that box you put under your seat." I pulled the box out and put it in my lap and looked over at Lefty Lewis. He looked back at me and checked the rearview mirror. "Go ahead." I stopped for a second. Maybe there was a loaded and cocked pistol hiding in the box. Maybe Lefty Lewis would have shot it out with the cop if he'd tried to take us to jail. I started raising the top of the box, and just as I was about to get it open, Lefty Lewis moved a lot faster than you'd think somebody's granddad could and slapped his hand on top of it, closing it back tight. Uh-oh. Maybe this was loot from a bank that him and Al Capone had knocked over. Maybe Lefty Lewis would have to rub me out if I saw what was inside. Maybe if I looked, I'd know too much. He said, "Before you look, Bud, you've got to understand that what's in there is very dangerous." I said, "Well, sir, I really don't think I need to see it, sir. I think I'll just look out the window until we get to Grand Rapids, or maybe," I gave a big fake yawn, "maybe I'll take a nap." He laughed and said, "Aw, you're a lot smarter than you look. Bud, you know it would have been curtains for us if that copper would have seen that what's in there." He tapped on the top of the box. All I could say was, "Yes, sir." He said, "Go ahead and open it. But you have to promise, no, you have to swear that you won't breathe a word about what you see to anyone." "Mr. Lewis, sir, I'd really rather take a nap." "Well, first open the box." I took in a big gulp of air and started to raise the top of the box again. Lefty Lewis yelled, "Bud!" I jumped so high I nearly banged my head on the roof of the car. I yelled back, "Yes, sir." "I didn't hear you swear to keep your lips locked." "Aw, shucks, Mr. Lewis, I swear, but I'd feel a lot better if I could take a doggone nap." I snatched the top of the box and got ready to be scared to death. It was just some paper with writing on it. Maybe the pistol or the loot was under all this paper. Kept lifting paper until I got to the bottom of the box. Nothing. I looked at Lefty Lewis. He said, "I warned you. Pretty dangerous, isn't it?" I must have missed something. I went through the box again. "How's some paper dangerous, sir?" "Read it." I took one of the papers out. It said, "Attention railroad workers. The newly formed Grand Rapids branch of the Brotherhood of Pullman Porters will be holding an informational meeting on Wednesday, July 23rd, 1936. All interested parties please come to 2345 Cold Brook at 9 o'clock. Refreshments will be served. You know what we're up against. Please keep this as confidential as possible." It was starting to make sense. I said, "Mr. Lewis, are you one of those labor organizers?" He laughed. "Not really, Bud. I'm picking these up so we can pass them out in Grand Rapids. We've been negotiating to get a union for the Pullman porters for years now, and nowhere in Grand Rapids will print these flyers for us. The only place that would do them is all the way in Flint. You are running away to a pretty hot town, young man." Wow. "That trouble the policeman was talking about at the factory is called a sit-down strike. Instead of walking in front of the plant with signs, the people who are on strike just sit down on their job. That way the bosses can't bring other people in to steal their jobs. They're going to sit there until the company gives them a union. So the company's trying everything they can think of to get them out. That's why I said those flyers are so dangerous. The people who run the factories and the railroads seem to be really scared. To them, if a worker has any dignity or pride, he can't be doing a good job." Boy, these automobiles were great for making you conk out. Between the car floating real soft